Hi, welcome to Let's Talk About Love Stories from Everywhere. I'm your host, Jill Ferguson, and with me today is retired Long Beach, California Fire Captain James Owen. How are you today?
Outstanding. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. So you are a retired fire captain, but you're also in the process of bringing out a book, right? It should be out in the new year in 2026. The book is called The Last Patient, and it covers kind of the start of your life almost until current time. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It
And,
takes us up till this year. Yeah.
okay. And so why did you decide to write a book?
So that is a very nuanced question. But ultimately, uh to I wrote the book because there wasn't a voice that addressed what was going on with me as a first responder and the trauma that I had built up. And that's a lonely place to be. And so writing the book was for my community, but ultimately it had a flip side of a very cathartic flip side to identify more things inside of myself that needed to heal. And the writing process is healing.
Okay. So all of us start with a childhood, and I believe that regardless of how happy your childhood was, most people have a little bit of trauma somewhere in their childhood, right? Do you agree with that?
I agree that there is always a negative takeaway to childhoods. They just vary in degrees of
Uh-huh.
negativity, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
there always is some sort of trauma stored in after childhood, and then typically that's to serve as to keep us out of harm's way later on, right?
yeah. Well, I had a student one time who believed that goldfish as pets were one of the first ways that kids learn about death because a
Mm,
goldfish doesn't last very long.
right.
And
Yeah.
so, even to a small child, your goldfish dying could be somewhat traumatic, right? Even
Certainly.
if you don't have the language to call it that at the time.
Certainly.
Um,
But just let me just take a little bit step further and talk about that because the resiliency that is in my book starts in childhood, and it does with most people, and that's a lot of time where we find answers about ourselves.
yeah, I like that. And that sometimes we're not even aware that we're finding the answers when we're kids, right?
Yeah, so essentially to be laser, those
Mhm.
injuries we get as children are the hooks that trauma grab on later on in life.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you started your life, right? You were born to a mom who was really young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I come from an Irish family, so I think that validates chaos and craziness through that population or my population. Excuse me if you disagree, it's just my opinion. But my mom grew up in a very challenging household. Uh, Her dad was a TWA pilot, and he was away a lot. And then her mom that stayed at home did the best that she could, but she suffered from alcoholism and that chaotic lifestyle. Early parented or early adult, excuse me, my mom to feel the need to leave home. So she fled from home and found a romance with a man that was 16 years older than her. Okay, but she was 16 at the time. That was a little bit of problematic, but they struck up an affair. Found a way to get married through parental release, and at 17, here I came into the world in London, England.
That's a crazy start to your life, right? But it's also huge growing up for her life fast. Yeah.
Certainly, and you can only imagine that being only 17 years apart, at times it's more brother sister than it is a mother son relationship because we're so close in age and essentially grew up together.
Yeah. That's a really good way to word it because I feel like sometimes when we have childhoods that parts of the childhood were forced to become more adult than child too early, right? That we don't really grow up.
Yeah,
Um,
certainly. And if anybody that wants to know at 54 years old, you feel like you're growing up, you certainly don't. Okay, you just always feel like you're growing up. So you got a long way to go. Keep after it. But back to so my mom already had her hooks, like I said earlier, and then she's got a baby, and then that just starts compounding the trauma. And so as a result, the childhood was, you know, it was chaotic. I'm not going to say that it wasn't loving. There definitely
Yeah.
was a lot of love, but a lot of chaos also.
And you came to the United States when you were how old?
So I was 2, and I was born to a Irishman that living in England, or had become an English citizen.
Mhm.
And so when the marriage dissolved, I was internationally kidnapped by each of them one time. My
Wow.
mom being the second one that internationally kidnapped me back to the United States, and so that ended that chaos routine. And then she would go on to, she had dropped out of high school, and so that's a struggle for a young mom. I got all the respect in the world for my mom and the other moms out there that struggle as single moms to turn around a traumatic life.
Mhm.
And by I made it to being a fire captain, so I think that she did her job.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like that. So your book is kind of written in what I would call like three parts, right? It has
Mhm.
your childhood or your younger years, where you did an awful lot of sailing and had some interesting first jobs. Do you want to mention one
Sure.
of those?
Sure. So let me set the table for everybody listening a
Yeah.
little bit. My book tracks my childhood through Northern California, and then some really crazy twists and turns that include going onto a sailboat and then into the fire department, and we go beyond from there. But to lay the tracks down, my mom marries a man, and he becomes my father. Okay, because I had him from age 5 on, and he was a wonderfully flawed man in every way. So fast forward through a tumultuous childhood, but it came time that I would need to get a job, and I wanted to get a car before I was 16. So we lived 4 miles out of town of Healdsburg, to the north, and I lived on a really beautiful vineyard and 96 acres of 100-year-old Zinfandel grapes, just picturesque town. But on the way home was a slaughterhouse, and they were looking for a cleanup boy. And so my coach said, "Hey, Owen, yes, sir, you're looking for a job? Go by Vanderboom Meat Company." And so I was like, yes, sir. So I got on my 10 speed and started right there. And my mind as a teenager is big, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be like, oh, ma'am, do you want you want two full name and youngs? Cool. I'll wrap those up for you. Oh, sure. You want some chicken? We got this all diced up over here. Let me serve. That's kind of what I thought I was going to. And as I rode down this driveway, I could hear this larger than life man barking out all these orders. And I was getting nervous as I showed up. And here's the funny part of the beginning of this story. He goes, "You the kid?" I'm, yes, sir. He goes, "I paid $7 an hour, which was more than
Oh
minimum
yeah.
wage at the time. It was double
Yeah.
actually. Cash right out of my pocket on Fridays. Your interview is you got to make it through this slaughtering that's going on right now to the end of it and not barf, and you can have the job." And I was it's a deal with the devil, right there. I'm like, $7 an hour. I'm going to get a car. I'm going to get some freedom. Okay, let's see if I throw up.
And the most unusual job interview or challenge thrown at
Yeah,
you, right?
yeah, and for the sake of the keeping the audience's stomach inside of
Yeah.
themselves, if the reason why that's in the book is the exploration that I take to go through gallows humor, which we'll find out later on as first responders is the mechanism to relieve stress. And when you read this story in my book, you probably have a barf bag ready. But if you make it through it, you'll see the strongness of the humor that we need to use to counterbalance what's seen in the field.
Yeah. And so as you had that job for a little while, you realized that wasn't the path you wanted to take when you became an adult too, right?
Yeah, I interest. So we're talking about like experiences that take kids, somewhere that they probably shouldn't be. But
Mhm.
I got to experience the food chain. And if I were to go home and tell my parents, I mean, they weren't that crazy. If I said, "Hey, by the way, I'm cleaning up after a mass murder of animals at night," they probably wouldn't let me stay there. But that was the beginning of doing things that I didn't like to do to get a result that I wanted on the back end. And
Mhm.
it's legal, it's part of the food chain. I respect the heck out of people that, and I really do love animals, okay? But the way that I got through that is I understood that I was witnessing the food chain.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of, so fast forward, okay, when I go to paramedic school, they say, "Hey, have you ever seen any gore? Do you think it'd be okay with it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm probably okay.
Yeah.
Probably do all right with the gore."
Yeah. So let's, since you mentioned the paramedic school, let's talk a little bit about that, because you went to paramedic school, and I think though we understand that as like people, right, that there's a medic truck that comes with the fire department logo on it, we
Mhm.
don't necessarily think about firemen or firefighters being medics,
You're right.
right?
It's super confusing. Who's showing
Yeah.
up?
So it's not all the firemen are also medics or all the
Correct.
firefighters, right? It's
Correct. It's a essentially it's a specialty.
Mhm.
So everybody that goes through a fire academy gets stamped firefighter,
Mhm.
and then after that you will accrue more specialties. So a paramedic is a specialty that you could have, and others. So that's the traditional route in, and I would say. Uh, for instance, my agency has paramedic ambulances, and then they have an additional paramedic that rides on the fire truck and fire engine, and additionally the fire boat, which is a really smart idea. So we have more paramedics in the ranks, but typically it's about, I'd say, 15-20% of the firefighters are paramedics.
Okay.
And the way that you can really know that a paramedic is showing up is it says it on the truck.
Okay.
Whatever, I say truck, but I
Mhm.
mean rig. Whatever rig
Mhm.
shows up, if it says paramedic on the side, you're going to get at least one paramedic. This is worldwide now, so I wouldn't know too far out of the United States, but it
Yeah.
pretty much stands up for here.
So you went to paramedic school first,
Right,
right?
but I want to put a little piece
Uh-huh.
ahead of going to paramedic school. So my parents end up selling everything, and we go down to Mexico and have this crazy odyssey down there of this sailing through Mexico, and so that's another rite of passage that I
And
took
you
along
were
the
a
way.
teenager still,
I was
right?
a teenager,
Yeah.
and by the time I came up to the United States after doing 2 tours of Mexico, I ended up on Catalina Island. And that's where I ran into some Long Beach firefighters that showed up when I was serving pizza at a pizzeria there and lit the flame to become a first responder. So, in regards to paramedics, by the time I had gotten to paramedic school, I had already decided to become a firefighter, and they told me that was the best route to getting in, to market
Mhm.
myself to get in. So, I was a high school dropout after going through that sailing adventure, and obviously it's in the book. But
Mhm.
so this was my first shot at like really difficult schooling. I had become an EMT at a college before when I was 18, but this was fire hose of information and another indoctrination into the fire service. So one thing I will say about there is you cannot fail more than two daily tests, and I failed my first test on day one, and that got my attention. And I
At the
worked my
medic school you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
paramedic school is no joke. It
Yeah.
is a very intense schooling for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't want a paramedic who was at the bottom of their class, right? Being the one that
No,
came
yeah.
to your call when it was like is life threatening. Yeah. Yeah. So you made it through paramedic school without
So
failing
so
another one.
so yeah. So I made it through paramedic school, and at the end of my island career, I was working for the city of Avalon on the harbor patrol, and one of the deputy sheriffs out there said. I told him I was going to move to the mainland to start pursuing my career as a firefighter. He said, "Hey, I just happen to know an ambulance company that works in the city of Linwood, and that ambulance company was Adams Ambulance, and I've got an in there. You could probably go over and at least do some part-time paramedic work." I had no idea where Linwood was, but Linwood's in a pretty rough part of town in Los Angeles County,
Mhm.
and so I got on part-time and then eventually on full-time with them. And That was an experience and a half because I grew up in grapes and vineyards.
Yeah.
Okay, and this was very cultural. Uh, there were a lot of gangs that were ruling the streets there, and they weren't too happy with one another. So I used to go home as a 23-year-old male and drive back to my apartment in Long Beach and go, I wonder if the Vietnam vets, this is about what they were seeing. It was
Yeah.
pretty rough back then. But so I got indoctrinated into all this. And there were a lot of crucibles along the way, and that was one of them.
So the slaughterhouse preparation served you well going into that situation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later, yeah, later on, it serves I become a paramedic with the department too. So I got to get that assignment, and I got those years behind me. So it all built on it. One another
Mhm.
builds up to where we get the career, I should say.
So, and there's also something that you mentioned in your book that you don't delve into a whole lot, which I don't think in the book it needs to, but I'm going to ask the question here, which
Mhm.
is you talk about people who are self funded with their education or are sponsored by the organization that they're going to go work for. Um,
Certainly.
so, what does that mean exactly, or how does that happen?
Okay. So uh, if the traditional route of getting into a fire department, and this is true for like in LA City, you need to have a high school diploma
Mhm.
and obviously a fairly clean record of some sort, and you can start there, and they'll train you the entire way up. But other cities that are smaller want want people to come in with the certifications already.
Okay.
So if you're lucky enough to start with a big fire department that can take you all the way and pay for you to go through paramedic school, and they are what you would say your agency sponsoring you, because of course they're paying you.
Hmm.
And then when you get ready to do your rides in the field, typically you go back to your department and then they do the rides, and they put a replacement person, an overtime replacement while you go to paramedic school in your spot.
Hmm.
So but the way that I had to do it was I just paid for the paramedic school and then saved up over the summer and lived very meagerly while I went to paramedic school, and just a roommate situation, and just made ends meet. Now, I didn't have an agency, so I had to talk an agency into saying, okay, you can come ride with us. Well, of course, I picked Long Beach Fire Department, and I had met those gentlemen before, and I did my rides. And let me tell you something, okay? It is not a good idea to show up day one, paramedic student, ready to go in a harbor patrol uniform with white deck shoes on in the Long Beach. Okay. I
Yeah.
was on the spit right from the beginning, right? I think they stopped laughing about noon because they had to eat. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and those are the things you don't think about when you're young either, right? Like how
Oh, just
this is
eager.
gonna go. Yeah.
It's just all eager energy.
Mhm.
And truth be told, I'm kind of a dork, so I just didn't. They said, "Put on your uniform, everything you wear at work." I'm like, "Really? Okay." Following directions. Here we go.
Yeah. And so then you ended up at Long Beach for how many years in the fire department?
So I got hired in 2000. So I did just short of 23 years with the city of Long Beach
Mhm.
in various positions.
Okay. And taking tests and moving up the rank eventually, and
So,
yeah.
the way it goes, the way it went for me is got hired on, and I had already put myself, like we said before, just to tie back to what we were saying for anybody.
Mhm.
The In my book, I mentioned a scab paramedic. Okay, and that's a guy that puts his, or girl, puts
Mhm.
his themselves through paramedic school, and they find an agency to sponsor them to do the rides. So just to put a cherry on
Mhm.
that Sunday, and then so back for me, I entered the department, and I did the same thing for the fire academy. I went through South Bay Fire Academy. So I started off as a firefighter. Make it through your probationary year where they're examining you one way and the other. I think pretty much everybody that I know can say their probationary year was probably the toughest year of their life. Um, and that for it's just for good reason. You want those people that are coming in emergencies to really know what they're doing, and to not freeze when it's time to work. So I got called up into the paramedic ranks, and there were some trials and tribulations getting back into that. But then I was a paramedic for 6.5 years before I promoted to captain. And although I really am well steeped in leadership and I respect leadership and I even write about leadership, I got to tell you, the ambulance will drive you to promotion. Okay. It is just that is where good firefighter attitudes go to die.
Mhm.
It's a beatdown. So those men and women that are on those ambulances really do some heavy lifting for the fire department. You can only imagine as the fire captain, I shut the doors on that ambulance and I'm going back to the fire station and they're going to the hospital. They're only halfway done with the call. So
Mhm.
after I did a big portion of my career at Station 11 in North Long Beach.
Mhm.
And Station 11 is a storage truck station. It's kind of where they put the cowboys of the fire department. It's a lot of action. It's a very busy place. And I was on the ambulance, on the paramedic ambulance, which we call rescue, and I promoted off of there out of that station. It was a matter of pride for me because it's a very busy place. And and then I started off my captain career. And through my captain career, I was all over the city. I had various specialties. That I was a fireboat captain, relief captain. So I was part of our design and build for the two beautiful fireboats you see down in the port of Long Beach. And then I also spent the majority of my 15 years as captain, I think 13 years with the lifeguards. So they have one fire captain that rides as a paramedic assessment uh, captain and deckhand. And I was fortunate enough to get to work with marine safety for 3 years fully assigned.
So you went almost back to your teen years or early 20 years back in
Well,
Avalon.
yeah,
That's a little different.
the word got out that I'm a waterman, and
Mhm.
what I didn't have was the lifeguard training. So Avalon Harbor Patrol, we did quite a bit of boat towing. We didn't do any like contact rescues or things of that nature. So the lifeguarding was what they had to teach me. And Long Beach has the most premier marine safety division in the entire state of California. There's multiple departments and people to train there because we have everything. Okay, river, harbor, open ocean, and those
Plus,
men
we
and
have
women down there
oil
do a really great
derricks
job. Yeah,
and a
yeah.
giant port and all kinds of other things that people don't often have. Yeah,
If I could toot my own horn, you talk about those oil derricks. I
yeah.
received the 2016 Meritorious Award for Bravery for my efforts as the incident commander, where me and a lot of other people averted an environmental disaster that day. Now, I'm not. Let me tell you why this is gold for me. Okay, it's the award. The award is the award. It could have said that I was the chief mayonnaise spreader on the sandwiches. I don't know. But my little boy Cash was in the stands as the police chief gave me that award at Long Beach State, and he remembers that, and I remember that. It was a real special father-son moment. So that's why it really is a
Right.
moment of pride for me.
And to tell a little bit about that story, right, is a boat came loose, or like
Yeah,
a giant boat. We're not talking a little pleasure
yeah.
boat. We're talking,
A 400-foot by 100-foot
yeah.
lumber barge, okay, empty, cut loose in the Anchorage Long Beach on that day with 40 knots of wind, gusts to 60, and it was moving at uh, 6 to 8 knots downwind and could have done some really significant damage to the platform that is the relay for. So if you look out at Southern California, you can see some oil platforms out there. Well, they're a long way out, and this is the relay pump station that pushes them up to the refinery. So if that would have taken that out, we would have had the residual 3,000 psi of what they're pumping there into the ocean.
Yeah,
So also being a waterman, it was also prideful that we protected the environment that day.
yeah. That's pretty amazing. And congratulations on getting the award and your son being there to
Yeah,
see
my son's jumping up and down award. That's how I see it.
it. Nice. I like it. So, since you brought up your son, let's talk a little bit about him because I know that's one of the great loves of your life, right?
Yeah. The other moment that just blows me away that he did that at 44 years old. I had mentioned I was a high school dropout, and that is not where I left things. I ended up getting my degree, special major in fire service management from CSU Sacramento. And that's the other time that he cheered like that. So uh when I just promoted to captain in December of 2007, and then my son was born February 28th of 2008.
Okay.
And I just was recently married and had a new dog, and so life was cooking along, and my priorities and my love structure and my love language changed that day when Cash showed up,
Yeah.
my little redheaded Irishman.
And since 2002, so now he's
Excuse me,
or
eight. It's
2008. Yeah,
2008. Yeah,
2008. Yeah.
so he's
So
17.
he's
He's
17 and headed to college soon.
yeah, he's a senior at local high school. He's doing really good. He's super
Yeah.
smart, so I guess he takes after his mom. But however he got it, he's doing really wonderful. I'm very proud of that young man.
That's great. And what does he think about you writing the book?
Oh well, let's scratch that one open a little bit here, okay?
Okay.
First of all, my book is dedicated to all the people who have ever loved a first responder, to moms, to the dads, to the wives, to the husbands, and the grandparents, and especially to the kids. They didn't have a choice in that. And my son didn't either. He just got chose by his creator to be in a first responder family. So although the fireman experience, the firefighter experience, and the growing up in a fire station and riding along in sneaking them right around on the rigs, we used to be able to do that. They're precious memories. But the other flip side of that is dad came home tired and depleted, spiritually depleted. And I started off my career with a really good charge of sobriety. And towards the end of my career, he got to see me in alcoholic rage. So that the job bit him too. It definitely did. So I wanted to point that out. But we survived that, and we worked that out. We have extremely open dialogue about where I was. Of course, I'm celebrating sobriety now, but he uses those moments as a not to, right, and we can talk about those and not have them be shame or embarrassment. They're life lessons, right? One of the things my book is written for the first responder, but it is a very masculine tone for sure, because that's just how I am.
Mhm.
But in part, the book is to relieve the guilt and shame that I had over losing my sobriety and being a first responder and hiding in that shame. You want to hide it, and you don't want to talk about it. And so I see how that life lesson serves for our family now, and I see how it's destroyed others.
Mhm. And you talk in the book about first responders, regardless of whether they're paramedics or cops or they work in the fire department or even military. You get really good at compartmentalizing or trying to compartmentalize your life, right? Pieces of it, so that
Sure.
you're not bringing the trauma that you just went through trying to save somebody or a building or whatever home.
You're
and
right.
you refer to it as there's a chair, right?
Hmm.
Where people
Well, let
know,
me.
like, don't disturb you if you're
y-
sitting
Yeah,
there and
that's
trying to get through
that's
stuff.
yeah. You're mentioning the favorite chair. The
Yeah.
first responder typically goes home, and if things aren't going well, they find the favorite chair. But the favorite chair is not a good place.
Yeah.
It's a place to be isolated with people around you,
Hmm.
and usually to engage in some sort of maladaptive coping techniques, such as drinking or
Yeah.
other things to numb.
Mhm.
But let me rewind here for a second, because I
Okay.
think this is a super important thing to double click on. Okay,
Hmm.
so there are a lot of types of professions that have engaged in some really challenging things and produce post traumatic stress or post traumatic stress injury.
Hmm.
um, I've availed myself just calling it post-traumatic PTSD because that's what people know.
Yeah.
It's a disability, or is it an injury? Injury you can recover from, and so let's talk about. So military, they go overseas, they fight that fight, they got to come back, and they got to quit fighting that war when they get back over here. Police officers, they go for 8, 10, 12 hours until they get to go home, and hopefully that's their family structure. In the fire service, we're gone minimum 24 hours and up to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And a lot of departments have switched to 48 hours. So when you go to work as a first responder, you're the modern warrior. Okay, you are there to go fight something with somebody else for the community. And in that case, your warrior armor or your edge, if you will, is out because you need to be able to do some really challenging things in a short amount of time. You leave your switchblade out, if you will, over that 24 hours. And in my case, okay, I lived 45-minute drive home. And that was my time to put the blade back in. Okay, because I was driving home to a wife that her day was babies, stuffed animals, when are the goats going to come by? And I just any first responder had a head full of whatever just happened. Sometimes you have a day of death, and to try to dismantle that. And that drive home is the most important moment of saving a family that could ever happen. It's the deep breath, and it's the what context do I need to be holding when I go across that door. I made that mistake, and every first responder made this mistake going, I think I'm okay. And you go and you're not okay, and the family's like on you.
Yeah.
And then so now I'm going to go back to the favor chair. And so if you're not ready to go home, you're not ready to say compartmentalize and put that day yesterday in yesterday's box and start on today's box of today, and realize you're going into your family. It's a loving environment, and to make that full transition, you go in with that negative energy and you bring that home to your family, and it comes to grow seeds and weeds of discontent in the family, and we find the favorite chair.
How, besides sobriety, what are some of the tools you've used to help heal yourself?
That is that would take an entire hour.
Yeah.
So let me just start by saying,
Give me some highlights.
yeah, let me start by saying anybody that is locked up in your brain, you've been through a really traumatic time, divorce, life has kicked you in the teeth, maybe donkey kicked you in the teeth. There is a way out, and you're not broken. So that is the first and foremost thing to know. And I have a mentor.
That's a really good time to put in your tagline right there.
Okay.
If you have a mantra that you use.
I do. I have a mantra in the book that's called "Situation Screwed, Still Survivable," and I'll explain what that means. So, looking at the insurmountable hill that wherever we get collapsed into a pain box that we can't see the way out, what comes up on my screen inside is, wow, this situation's screwed. And I would stay in that, and I would dwell in that side, and I would fester in it, and alone myself and other people, and find how terminally unique I was with my situation, and nobody would understand. Okay, but that was the wrong way to go. Still survivable puts me in the fight. It puts me into solution. Puts me into, okay, so this is still survivable. Let me start looking for the clues of things that are going to help me with survivability. Now, I'm going to take a launch point here to talk about my book. Now, if you're watching this and my book is out, get it and read chapter 0, because that runs you through a multiple somatic reset protocol that is derived out of about 4 or 5 different things that I have done to drive yourself to the still survivable, the solution part, the on your side part. the warrior starting to love the warrior part. The warrior saying, "Okay, I can lose a battle. I'm not going to lose this war. Let's reload. Let's sit down. Let's recalibrate,
Yeah.
and let's figure out what the next step is." And a lot of times, the next I just had this conversation today, and it's ringing up for me to say right now is that a lot of times we're looking around for something to do, and we're exhausted, but sometimes it's something to subtract. Okay, or people, places, things, objects, addictions, thought patterns. Those are also clues to us where to do what different type of modality to deploy where. So just to give us some bookmarks to talk about here. Okay, so on the very far left, I saw a shaman, and that's a hilarious story because I show up and the guy's like, he looks like he's giving ready to give me a tour on a riverboat rafting tour. He's like, "Hey, I'm the shaman." I'm like, "You're the shaman, dude? Really?" So I work with the shaman, and that includes psilocybin therapy. And that's if people don't know what that is, it's magic mushroom therapy. And I did it under a supervised shaman experience. And you can learn about that in my book. All the way to the very far right, which is a very structured. For instance, I've done Bud's Odyssey Foundation funded me to go through 40 uh, neurofeedback sessions, which is the computer program that remodulates the warrior brain to be able to drop into a meditative state, and then they compound that healing that does with hyperbaric oxygen. And I've done everything I could think of in between. So here's an example. Okay, maybe you might like float tanks. Okay, that's not my jam, man. It is not my jam. I get in that float tank and I'm like, "Hey, what am I supposed to do?" They got some little thing, your head's supposed to go back on there. Okay. And apparently, look, so I finally get in the groove and let it all relax. And I'm in this warm bath and I let it all go like a baby would, right? I let it all go. And I get out of there and, okay, I never need to do that. And I let the guy know, "Hey, I'm sorry. I felt like a baby in there and I did what babies do." And he's like, "Dude, that's 500 pounds of salt that I got to put back in there." So I'm not a candidate for that, but what I do want to encourage anybody that's hurting is the number one thing to take away is seek. Go seek. Try it on. Don't get discouraged because I tried a million things till I found a recipe that worked for me.
Yeah. And there is something that's makes it survivable for everybody.
Hmm.
People just need to figure out what that is for
Like
themselves.
if I had to say somewhere to start that works the best for everybody is breath work.
Yeah.
YouTube it. There's a million different kinds.
Mhm.
I would be recommending to mine,
Yeah.
but it's you find the one that works for you.
Yeah. That's great. And so, as we're getting close to time here, I want to ask you about another love of your life, right? Because you met kind of the woman of your dreams,
Yeah.
and
And
you got engaged this year.
I did. Craziness. Okay, so this is the greatest story here. So I have to do 2 laps through recovery, and I carried a lot of guilt and shame with that. But you know what? I leaned into my recovery, as we can tell, right? I leaned into my recovery, and I was not looking for this lady, but I was at a bowling alley for a networking event. It's not replicatable, and this beautiful, I don't know, just beautiful, tall German blonde comes up to me, and we click together like magnets. And it is such a wonderful love story that ends, by the way. The love story doesn't end, but the book ends essentially with me proposing to Ariane and the incredible arc that it took to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we learn so much as we go through life into different relationships, right? About what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what we do differently next time. um, and then we end up getting to a person that just seems to fit us so well in the moment, way different than anything we've experienced before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the cool side of the pillow,
Yeah.
if you will.
And it's
You know what
usually
I
when
mean?
we're not even looking for them.
Yeah. just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they remind us to love things that just we love. Like, when was the last time you smelled the top of a baby's head?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Or how about petrichor? Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Okay, that
Petro's a rock,
that
right?
that
Yeah.
that earthy smell just after
Yeah.
it rains.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is just the greatest. And out of
It
California.
always reminds me. I always say, "Oh, the worms are out," because it's the time where you end up seeing worms on the pavement, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
from that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's this and sailing. Okay,
Hmm.
big
Yeah.
part of my story is sailing.
Hmm.
If you've never been out on well, so many people get seasick, and that's such a bummer. But there's it's the ultimate green machine. We've been, using wind to go around the planet for hundreds and hundreds of years, and man has learned a lot about himself out on the sea, just like I did.
Well, an interaction with dolphins and whales and stingrays and other things make you can't not know there's God. I mean, because they're God in fish form, mammal form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most certainly. And we talk. There's a really cool several dolphin encounters in my book,
Yeah.
and nature and wildlife stand up to be another thing when you're asking me the modalities that
Hmm.
really solved problems for me, and to allow nature to co-regulate with my energy. That wasn't like
Hmm.
that wasn't rolling off my lips when I started on this post-traumatic stress journey.
Yeah.
um, there are other things that I would love to suggest to warriors: aromatherapy,
Yeah.
okay, sound bath, and ultimately, I'll go ahead and mention, if I could mention it here.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to find me, by the way, can go to www.captainjamesowen.com,
Uh-huh.
and there you'll find a link to my up and coming book that should be out in the next, say, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And also a initiative called Camp Pivot. And Camp Pivot right now is a concept, a digital warehouse where warriors can meet services and people, and make that connection to seek outside modalities and to find communities that can support them. One of the falsehoods that I had as a first responder is that I went down the route of what was offered to me to solve my post traumatic stress, and it was not effective. I had to go outside of traditional methods and to find a modality that worked for me. So for anybody that's got trauma, just continue to seek, stay in the
And
survivable part.
and
But the camp
your Camp Pivot is you're planning on it being a physical space at some point in the
Correct.
future
So
too.
Camp Pivot right now is a heart mission. Okay, it's a legacy. So I'm looking for people that want to create eventually a brick and mortar place that is paid for, where the warrior can come and take off their armor in a communal setting, and we can put forward the best of what we know about recovering from post traumatic stress, and education about the modalities that may be on the fringe. At least you're aware of them, and we want to bring all the warriors home, everybody to come home. And like we were talking about, making that switch from from being in a fight to switching our nervous system and coming home to a loving environment. And that's really what Camp Fluid seeks to do: restore the warrior.
Yeah. That's an admirable vision, and I look forward to working with you to help you reach it too.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. And thank you for taking the time to be on our show today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the last patient will be available everywhere books are sold starting early in 2026.
Right. But I encourage you to go ahead and go to my website now and get on
Yeah.
the email list,
Oh,
because
yeah. So
you will get
you
bonus
them out.
material from the author, and you will be notified of a virtual book signing where we'll have
Good.
question and answers with the author.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.